Thanks for joining us for today's webinar, Performance Management, Your Deed to Success. I'm Greg Barry, Director of Communications in the Office of Alumni Affairs. Since we're virtual, please excuse any technical issues that may pop up. If you have problems with your video or audio, click the reconnect button on your screen to get back to the webinar right away. Also, if you have questions, drop them in the chat. We'll have time for Q&A before we leave. Today, we're excited to welcome Dee Maddox to our webinar series. Dee owns a bachelor's degree from the UAB Klatt School of Business and an MBA from George Washington University. With more than 25 years of experience in human resources and government compliance, Dee has worked for NASA Marshall Space Flight Center and with the USDA. Today, she is founder and CEO of DMX Consulting. Dee, at this time, I would like to formally welcome you and turn things over to you. Thank you so much for being with us, and it's great to have you. And Dee, I think somehow we lost video and your connection. So if you can hear me, see if you can't log out and come back in. That may get things corrected. And so we have that disclaimer off the top for everybody, just in case something happens. Dee, are you back? Can I hear you?
I am back. I'm
Perfect.
Here.
Great.
Sorry.
It is all you. Thanks so much.
Thank you. So good afternoon, everyone. As Greg has done an amazing job of introducing me, my name is Dee Maddox, and of course, I am a Blazer, green and gold through and through. I am excited to be before you today talking about something that I came up with, performance management, your deed to success. Now, why and how did I wind up in front of you today? Well, it all started in my undergraduate years at UAB. But even before that, when and how did we get hooked on performance? It started in second grade. In elementary school, kindergarten, pre-kinder, we start awarding prizes and stars and points and colors to behavior. So it's ingrained in us that we need to achieve and we need to be awarded for how we perform, or as students, how we behave. In my second grade class, my teacher was Miss Hamill, and she had something that was so amazing. She had the prize box, and she had the most amazing prizes in that box. And I remember vividly my first trip to the prize box. And that's when it started for me, the desire to earn more and more prizes. And performance is no different. Everything that we do, we want to be recognized and rewarded for. Where we shop, we get points for discounts. We have rewards cards at every retailer that we go to. When we work hard, we expect to be rewarded with bonuses and time off and all sorts of other attaboys that we give in the workplace. So why should you put your performance in someone else's hands? Your performance should belong to you. You're in charge of your performance. So what we're going to do today is talk about performance management, your deed to success. Now, a deed signifies ownership. I was born and raised in Birmingham, and after I met and married my husband some 25 years ago, we embarked upon a series of career moves, going from city to city as promotions and job changes came. What I noticed with each one of those moves, we had to relocate. That relocation required us to identify our new location, find a new home, find new service providers, and in my case, even find new work. As we are moving through our careers, and our careers are a large part of our life, why would we allow someone else to own the things that make us successful? In the pandemic in 2020, I decided that I didn't want to return to work after working from home for 2 years, and I launched DMX Consulting. And the DMX stands for Demand Excellence. The correlation there is one that lets me remember you can only get to the prize box if you make the goal. And that is why I decided to devote my pursuits to sharing why performance is so important. And I want you to own that decision and be successful in your career. And that's what we're going to talk about today. In our workplaces, we get to judge others, they get to judge us. But in 2023, the Society of Human Resource Management released an article, and it proved what I've been saying all along. Performance reviews are broken. Why? Because there's human involvement. When we judge things, all of the experiences and all of the things that make us who we are come into play, and not just the factual evaluation of the performance in front of us. So with that, SHRM released this article, Performance Reviews Are Broken. Why am I talking about performance reviews when I'm telling you to own your success? If you're not an entrepreneur or a business owner, then someone else is responsible for evaluating your performance. That should not be solely up to them. You have to get involved in the process, because as it is, even though some of them are changing, it's broken. So, what are we going to talk about today? We're going to talk about the fact that the way performance currently is handled in most corporations, other than a couple of IT firms that are currently changing and going to a more non-human based evaluation. Why do we need to change? What's stopping us? How do we do it? How do we own it? And what's the bottom line? You can see on this slide a slowly employee looking down over a ledge like he's about to jump. Why? Because he's on the hamster wheel of annual reviews that always seem to go the same way. Statistics have proven that 82% of leaders worldwide agree that the performance management evaluation tools that they're using are not effective. And they're not even keeping up with what they're doing as a business. Post-pandemic, the measures that we used for in-office evaluation became ineffective when we started doing remote work. So why are we still using the same tools to evaluate our employees? So that's what your work is based on. Is the person who's in the office getting a better evaluation than you? How can you demonstrate and communicate to your boss your worth, your value, and your contribution if he doesn't see you every day? But realistically speaking, managers know and employees know the same thing that SHRM already told us. That system is ineffective. It needs to be changed. What's stopping us? Rewards without ratings, the trust of our managers, and senior advocacy. When we rate people and say, that was a great job, and then there's no bonus, there's no time off, there's no public acknowledgement, you don't even know your rating. Sometimes it's just a checkbox and they move on to the next year. People also stop trusting managers who reward favorites or who ignore the long-term game, and they only do what Janet Jackson said. They rate you on what have you done for me lately. So you're in quarter 4, but they're forgetting how you knocked it out of the park in quarters 1, 2, and 3. And executive support is often missing because the time and money that's poured into these performance management tools, more than $1.6 billion into tools used to rate others. Most companies, once they adopt these systems, don't want to abandon them. But we need to change, but there are things holding us back. So this little cartoon, it's one of my favorite. I'm citing here a book, How Performance Management is Killing Performance and What to Do About It. We have to rethink it, redesign it, and start over with the reboot. So that little ship hanging on the end, of course, is supposed to be a sample of the Mayflower when we thought that the world was flat. And what we know now is that that's not true. We don't know that performance management appraisals actually do anything to enhance performance after they've been conducted. So that's the number one flaw, that what we believe about performance is untrue. You can rate it, but it has no direct impact on actually improving performance. Crazy, right? How do we move forward? This bicycle is designed to depict the way forward. And on the bicycle, in print too tiny for either one of us to read, you'll see the 3 things that I've highlighted. Number 1, 2, and 3, the goals of how performance should be viewed. The focus of performance should be 1, to develop the people. 2, to reward them equitably. Key word there, equitably. And 3, to drive organizational performance. Now, I already told you previously that 82% of leaders don't even think that performance appraisals are improving performance. Well, doing them just to do them without focusing in on the outcomes and the things cited within them ignore the actual opportunity to correct the performance. So if we look at these 3 common goals, to develop the people, to reward them, and to drive the performance. So if you see the wheels on the bicycle, of course, are about the driving forward. The handlebars are driving the organizational performance, and the seat, of course, is the people. The people are the key to every organization. If individuals are being developed and performing well, then the organization is going to perform well. And if they are performing well, then why not reward them accordingly? It seems simple, but it often doesn't happen. So when you think of these 3 things, and it's not just a checkbox, that you're actually doing the performance appraisal with the intent to provide ideas and categories for development, to reward accordingly, you'll see the people and the organization change right before your eyes. Now, this is how it usually goes when you go into the office for an in-year in a poor performing organization. You have what we can assume is the HR or manager sitting on one side, and she says, let's just go through your 2 areas of strength and your 322 areas for development. That seems lopsided. 2 areas of strength and 322 opportunities for improvement. There's Clifton Strength Finders indicates that we should focus on strengths and not weaknesses. If we focus on getting better at what we're already good at and stop focusing on the weaknesses, Disney calls it recasting, when they take employees and move them into roles where they can shine every day and love what they do. We shouldn't have 322 areas for development in a job that we're performing on a daily basis and only 2 areas of strength. That means that somewhere something has gone really wrong. So you see the answer. Gary began to suspect that his performance management meeting could have gone better. Keeping open dialogue throughout the year should prevent you from having 322 areas for development. If you started that way at the beginning of the performance period, it shouldn't be that way at the end of the performance period. 98% of employees in poor performing organizations would rather have a root canal than a performance appraisal. That's crazy, something painful. And that's how most people review performance appraisal, as a painful, time-sucking exercise. It's not actually designed to do those 3 things we talked about. Develop the people, reward them equitably, and drive organizational performance. We've got to change the way we do it. When we change how we treat the people, we change how they perform, but you've got to take charge of that process. So, how do we take charge of the process? We have to own it. Now, for my note takers, I love words, and I've come up with an acrostic for the word own. We have to overcome the obstacles in our workplace. We have to work hard, and we have to nourish the growth in individuals and in teams. That's how we own it. And when you have this ownership, you can get to what I affectionately refer to as the D.E.E.D, the design, education, execution, and documentation of a sustainable process that allows correction and increased performance. So that's what we're going to talk about, how to own it through overcoming the obstacles, working hard, and nourishing the growth of those employees through communication and coaching and mentoring. But it begins with how we do the work, educating people about the work, building capacity, and then documenting the process and doing it all over again. That's the D.E.E.D. That's how you get ownership in a performance relationship between leaders and employees. When you're designing the work, you want to define, prioritize, execute, measure, and evaluate. I'm going to take a bio break for a sip. Sorry about that. So when you're defining the work, you have to make a plan. Statistics show that 50% of employees don't actually know what's expected of them. Now, how is it that you're on the job every day and you don't actually know what's expected of you? Well, when you own your success, you have to have clear expectations. Those expectations are driven by the design or the definition of the actual work. And we know that we have more work than we can accomplish in any 8-hour day. So we have to prioritize. And then you've heard the phrase, work smarter, not harder, how we perform the work. And then are we doing it well? How do you know you're winning if you're not keeping score? We have to measure the work that's being performed. And if those measurements don't meet with the expectations when we evaluate it, then it's time to change the design. The second phase of owning your success is setting expectations. Expectations are like nonverbal communication. They're more powerful, and much of it is not even communicated. Most of the expectations are unspoken. You get on the job and you're expected to do well, but no one actually tells you what you need in order to do well. So there has to be an organizational alignment between the reality of the work and the expectations. I can't tell you that I expect you to do a certain number of reviews or see a number of patients or decrease wait time without making sure you have the tools and instruments to do that, and making sure that you include the key competencies necessary to perform at a certain level. In another 10 to 15 years, there's going to be an aspect of technology in all of our jobs. So if you're not including technological competency in the job as you're recruiting and identifying the people that you select, those competencies may be missing. You have someone who's really good with technology and super savvy, they're getting more of their work done. And you have another person who's using manual processes and doing it their own way simply because they don't have the competency to do it. Might be time for some recasting. Number 3, when you want to enforce accountability. Once you know what's expected, it's just like we do our kids. You don't just turn your back completely. You have to continue to monitor, to provide guidance, and to enforce anything that you see going off track so that you have time for correction. And that correction improves performance and productivity. And you do that by providing regular feedback. Are you having a one-on-one meeting? Are you having a Monday morning stand-up talk with your team? Are you having weekly staff meetings? Providing regular feedback is the key to making those expectations clear so that they don't continue to be uncommunicated. It's like shooting at a target with a blindfold on and making sure your team stays motivated. There are some E personalities out there like me. We're extroverts. We bring our own energy. I do what I like and I love it when I'm doing it. But if you find that your team needs motivating, you have to create a culture of motivation. So motivation and feedback go into knocking down the barriers of those uncommunicated expectations. Building capacity. The execution, working smarter, not harder, is the third phase in owning your success. Creating alliances with internal systems, training, coaching, mentoring, Performance development through shadowing. How many of you are paired with a senior worker when you take on a new assignment? Someone to show you the ropes and all of those things that are unwritten in the manual. Someone knows where the bodies are buried. They know the political climate. They know the go-to people. They know the hot buttons. Creating a capacity building system to allow for smart execution of the work that's been designed and that you've been educated on. You now need to do it in a smart way that works for you. Putting systems and processes in place by building good work habits is how you're going to own that success. So one of my favorite authors, James Clear, has a book. Many of you may have read it. It's over my shoulder, Atomic Habits. In the book, Atomic Habits, he talks about breaking bad habits and building good ones. And those good habits, like what good habits are we trying to build? We want to build habits that simplify, eliminate, and automate redundancies in our work. That's going to improve our execution and build our capacity. So design, educate, execute, and the fourth element of the D.E.E.D, documenting that performance. Your mind is not a computer. If you document as you go along, the meeting notes from your one-to-one, a performance journal, if you're doing individual assessments, personality assessments, mid-year reviews, quarterly reviews, writing all of that down so that there is a formal record, or at least an accurate record. A written record trumps memory every time. You shouldn't have 322 opportunities for improvement at the annual review, because throughout the year, you've been providing that regular feedback that's going to allow you to address those things as they're happening. So appraisals, 360 feedback, where you're checking with peers and subordinates and leaders. How am I doing? Michael Jackson was wrong. What you see in the man in the mirror is not the same as what folks see when they're looking at you. You see one thing, they see something else. If you want a clear evaluation, do a 360 feedback. What do others say about you? It's not just about what you think. This is not a time to pile on a person. This is a time to provide constructive, clear feedback about some areas that may use some improvement to ultimately increase and improve performance. Assessments, writing down what you've done, which projects you collaborated with other units, other teams, other divisions, which things you did automatically without being told. When you go into that quarterly, mid-year, and annual review, you should have your highlight reel ready to share with your manager. Most managers and leaders are not in a position where they have only one direct report. They may know and like you and know of you and know what you do, but ultimately it's your responsibility to document those wins. And along those same lines, it's also your responsibility when you're not getting the tools and training that you need to be successful. It's your responsibility to ask for it. That's how you own your success. You have to know your job, know the expectations, work smart, and then document along the way. It's the only way that you can overcome the hardship. You can work hard and then nourish your own growth through mentoring, coaching, training, and document along the way how that happens. And if you have questions, don't wait for your boss to call you. Communicate, and communicate more than once if necessary. You know that you're in a meeting-driven society and they're hard to catch up with, and there's never time available on their calendar. Write a note, stick it on the door, leave it on the desk, send them a DM through Teams, Slack, whatever method of communication. Some people have work-issued phones. For me, text works better. Communicate, communicate, communicate. That's going to improve your opportunities to own your success. What's the bottom line to all of this? When you want to be successful in what you do in your work environment, that translates to individual success. It improves your opportunity to be accountable to others, for others to hold you accountable. It improves the workforce planning process of who you recruit into certain jobs and positions. Knowing that you are going to get the tools and skills that you need, coaching and mentoring, those are retention tactics. People don't quit bosses, they quit. I'm sorry, I got it mixed up. People don't quit jobs, they quit bosses. If you have a bad boss who never communicates with you and is always playing the gotcha game, and you go into another environment where it's clear about what's expected, you have the tools that are needed for success. You have the resources to go and get necessary training and skills upgraded. Even retooling is necessary as technology continues to embark upon us. We may need to go and get training on the newest tools and softwares out there in order to use them most effectively. And when you have successful individuals, you're going to have a more successful team. You're going to have a more profitable company. So, performance management, your deed to success, is all about owning the deed through overcoming the obstacles, working hard, and nurturing growth as you set upon designing, educating, executing, and documenting your performance journey. So, that's what I've got. And I'm open to questions. And I'm going to stop there. Greg, I think we're right at the half-hour mark. I do have a one-pager on owning your success. And if you text the word DEED to 66866, I'm happy to share it with you. And if you'd like to connect with me, go Blazers on LinkedIn. That's my LinkedIn QR code. And it's been a pleasure being in front of you as I open the floor for questions. I'm Dee Maddox of DMX Consulting, where we demand excellence and achieve success.
Awesome, awesome, awesome. And I just tossed that the text to that short code into the chat for people in our audience. And if you do have questions, please toss them in the chat box. We will get those answered. Love the fact that you have your QR code there. We're going to keep this up while we do Q&A. I'm just going to go ahead and get the ball rolling. So some leaders, they're just scared of having constant conversations. How do they somebody that's been in the business, been in a leadership position for a while, how do you encourage them to kind of change the way they approach things? Because we have been taught evaluation. Sometimes they don't talk throughout the year.
That is why it's up to the individual employees to take the burden off the leaders. And that's what this process is about, flipping the script. Because in most environments, whether you're in education or whether you're in municipal government or federal government or even corporations, the responsibility of managing large teams that are often located and dispersed across countries and states and even global, you can't have your eyes on everyone. It's up to the employees to go to the source. I want employees to stop waiting for managers to come to them and identifying the tools that are necessary and doing that in multiple ways. Well, I text my manager to say, can I go to training? I never got an answer. Maybe they were bombarded with hot potatoes, putting out fires, and they weren't able to respond to a training request. But if that need for training is impacting how you perform, then how you approach it and how you couch that narrative by saying immediate attention required. I use something in my email subject lines called the do, know, buy. What do I want you to do and what I want you to know by when? If I need immediate assistance and I'm requesting your assistance, the subject of my email is going to say assistance requested. Now, even if I think I'm going to bypass D because she doesn't outrank me and she emails too much and I don't want to be bothered today, wait, she just said immediate assistance. I don't want to be left holding the bag knowing that you asked me for assistance and I didn't respond. So changing how we communicate and having the employees take on the burden of going to the managers who are already overburdened with multiple teams, often dispersed across countries, states and across the country.
Just by listening to you for the last half hour, one word comes to mind: communicate. And that is kind of the basis of the DEED and the system that you kind of set up, because it's an ongoing conversation and you do want to have these, you want to have the hard conversations throughout the year, as we said. So have you noticed any differences between how the generations approach things and even with the DEED setup?
Yes. They don't want to be guided. They just want to do. There's a book called Who Not How They want to say, is it my job to do it? Let me do it my way. They want to be the who. They don't want you to tell them the how. And they also don't read email. 35% of all emails go unread unless there's a critical need because you outrank me or because I owe you money. If there's something tangible related to it, then you're probably going to get a response. Otherwise, the younger generations actually prefer immediate communication through Snapchat and through text and through Slack and through Teams. You can probably start a team chat and get someone faster than you can via email if that's the method that you're using in the office. They don't actually rely on newsletters. If you want to put out a secret, put it in the newsletter. The young people will never find out. If you put it in in your social page and you've told them to follow you there, which most companies, even UAB, has multiple pages, that's how you're going to be able to communicate through social and through direct messaging.
And just a note to people in the webinar room, we will have a replay of this for you. We're going to upload it on Monday. We have a staff retreat, so I'm not going to have time to get it done before then, but we will have it so you can watch the slides as often as you want. I think the key thing is to listen to Dee's message as well. Question from the audience: as the workforce has changed since COVID, more staff, they want to be paid more and do more instead of earning a raise after proving themselves. What is your opinion for how to approach this situation? So staff wants to be paid more to do more instead of earning a raise after proving themselves.
That depends on the compensation system. So actually, where most companies are moving towards to address exactly that, they're separating performance from compensation. So performance will be exclusive to what do I need to do to perform my job better? And you can evaluate me on that through those priorities and those performance standards as written in the job description. Separately, on the HR side, compensation is given for actual documented projects and whatever metric that's being rewarded based on the accomplishment of those. So that goes to the compensation planning piece of it when you communicate how that next level is reached and what it's going to be based on. So getting away from tying a percentage bonus to the performance itself. The performance needs to improve because you're getting paid to do a job, but raises and bonuses should be separate based on actual outcomes that have been identified in a separate factor outside of the performance appraisal.
When it comes to somebody who has a supervisor and they want to have that conversation, you mentioned, you should be seeking out the appraisal from peers and all that. What's the balance between getting appraisals from supervisors and asking your peers, who are in your work environment?
Your peers know the real you and not the you your boss gets to see on the occasional basis. And if you're actually looking to overcome those hurdles and identify opportunities for improvement, you have to ask the person beside you. Now, there are a few times where you start in the organization together and the person goes above you and winds up being a boss. They may know you, but if you're just peers, they're the ones who are in the trenches with you side by side every day, and they know your weak spots. They know your blind spots, and they can shine a light on those for you. And instead of taking it as a defense mechanism that they're telling you something wrong, if one person says it, then it's something for you to think about. If two people say it, it's something that you might need to actually dive a little deeper. If three people say it, it's a trend and it's something that you really need to address. And that's what you can get from a peer group evaluation in the form of a 360 feedback assessment.
Who's going to be more honest, the peer or the supervisor with you?
I think the supervisor wants to be honest, but they also have more at stake if they hurt your feelings or get you in a mood where they give you a bad evaluation. A bad evaluation can make an employee shut down. And if they don't agree with, if they know that they suck and they don't expect and they get to meet expectations, you're probably never going to hear from them. Supervisors are in a very unique position because they have the political nuances involved. Peers, there's nothing for them to lose by evaluating you honestly.
Is there such a thing as too much communication, too many check-ins, too many meetings, things like that?
I wish there were, but there isn't, because in most environments, that's never been the case where, oh, I'm so tired of being over communicated with. To be clear is kind, to be unclear is unkind, according to Brene Brown. And just being clear, the only way to do that is to talk about it. It's like with kids or puppies. How do you get them to do what you want them to do? You have to keep saying it again and again. And as a trainer or as a presenter, they say, tell them what you're going to tell them, and then tell them again. So I have yet to find, like with the improving performance based on performance appraisals, I've yet to find any statistics to say too much communication is bad for you, unless you're in an environment where clandestine, where communication is a bad thing. But in any other circle, communication is necessary.
And keep those questions coming. Very, very good questions that we've had. Fantastic presentation. Just as somebody says, how do you stand up for yourself when you receive a solid performance appraisal, but get a small blanket raise instead of one based on your production?
That is the system that's been designed by the organization, and that's something your manager doesn't have control over, and that's why performance reviews are broken. As long as there's one little cookie to share with 5 kids and you have the manager who's got to decide how to split the cookies, if you've ever had a nice perfectly crumbly cookie and you don't cut it, even if you use a knife, it's not going to break up in equal parts. And so the manager is left trying to decide who to give how much to. If you're on an awesome team and everyone has great performance, how do you cut up that cookie when you have tenure involved, when you have friends, when you have harder projects, you have some people who have more work? Depending on where you're assigned, you could be in one division doing the same thing as someone in another division that has way less workload, but you're in the same job title and doing the same work. It's a very difficult cross to bear, and that's why the two have to be separated.
Peer and 360 reviews can be a challenge to process positively when there is a tough message. I mean, nobody wants to have that difficult conversation, but you often have to. It's important to remain open to hearing and understanding the feedback and intentions, and it's important to pay attention to that, isn't it?
I agree. I actually do a leadership model where I do 360 assessments as hired by external corporations because they don't want to deliver the outcome. And so when you bring in a consultant to deliver a toolbox of 360s to your team, you tell them 10 to 15 people, make sure that you have all of the different categories, subordinates, peers, as well as supervisors, direct supervisors, and dotted line supervisors, so that you're getting a full picture. Having it administered by a third party and having that third party deliver the 360 can take some of the burden off. And I believe that's often why they bring someone else in, because those opportunities are being identified by someone else who doesn't know any of the people involved in providing the responses and who's telling you based on the outcome, this was the trend. And this was an outlier. You're always going to have that one person who's still mad that you got the best parking spot or the best cube or office who's going to zing you. But ultimately, the others you might find that they admire you and look up to you. So they're still a good thing to do, even though they are difficult. Anything worth having is going to be difficult.
With 25 years in HR in the field, how long ago did you start working on this process and really said, you know what, this is something that I need to focus on? I know you made the transition, obviously, around the Great Resignation, and we talked about that in a podcast. And quick plug, May 23rd, 2022, episode 72, had Dee on, had the pleasure of meeting her. But how long did you work on the process before you actually implemented it?
I worked on it, and this is what, if there are any budding entrepreneurs or people who want to make the leap, the thing that has brought you the most pain. So I'm a high achieving overperformer, and my last 2 performance ratings in my last job when I wasn't working for myself were meets expectations. And I'm not a meets expectations kind of girl. I am a hit it out of the park, kill myself because I want that gold star. I want that prize from the prize box. And like someone mentioned, and then I found myself with a meet expectations and no bonus at all. Knowing full well that I had documented the extra work, I'd done extra things in pandemic. And then to get those 2 ratings to say you didn't do any extra is when I decided that this is never going to be the type of evaluation that I'm looking for. And the system is not going to change immediately, no matter what I do. So performance management was something that was painful for me. And that's why I decided to dedicate my process to designing it. And the D, another play on my name, D.E.E.D, and then coming from a government background, documentation is important. Documentation and communication never go away. So DMX, the initials of my name, Dee Maddox, and then the D initially was demand excellence in everything. And then I added the D, demand excellence in everything you do, another play on the deed, and then came up with the steps to creating sustainable process just because of project management background. You have to define what you're trying to do, educate everybody on what you're trying to do, execute it, and then document it and start all over again. So I started that process of defining it in October of 2020, applied for the patent and trademark. We did the waiting, finally got that in November. So I say overall, it was maybe about a 2-year process, but using all the tools about workforce, about training, about employee development and leadership, change management, you know, my favorite book already, Who Moved My Cheese, and then Atomic Habits, eliminating, automating, and simplifying things in a way that's easy to understand. I could deliver this talk with or without the slides because I still want you to know you have to own your deed to success, with or without, because I'm not a PowerPoint expert. I don't have animation. I don't have video, cartoon. I love to share information, and I do that through words. So it took about 2.5 years to develop a process from start to finish.
And as we go forward, how do you continue to kind of redefine what it is and massage it? Or do you look at it and go, you know what? I think we're good for now.
No, it's a continuing process. As technology increases, I've added the 360 assessment. I've added the self-assessment through a leadership model called Lead Now, where you decide what the leadership factors are on delivering excellence, on innovating, on delivering change, and developing others. So I'm continuing to add tools and opportunities on how you own the success and ways to do that. So the actual platform D doesn't change, but how I deliver it through executive coaching, through assessments, through leadership development training. I've developed a couple leadership academies for some corporations where I go and I deliver communicating and feedback. I deliver leadership essentials, and even actually perform the assessment and then bring the team together to debrief them.
How did you navigate a career change? Because you pivoted.
I did. I started in the night while working my day job. Every night I would grab my little notebook and scribble, you know, ideas around. I write my name. I was one of those girls who's always writing in their name. I write my name. I look at it. After I read the book Story Brand, coming up with a name for a company, I knew that I didn't want to do. I had about an hour and a half commute, 35 miles. I'm in Frisco, Texas, which is north of Dallas, and I worked in downtown Dallas. I didn't miss my commute. I didn't actually miss my job. And I knew that I wanted to get out of the analyst role and back to delivering information to people. So I said, I think I'm going to leave the analytics behind and go back to HR. So I started reading and researching entrepreneurship, which, by the way, now is a discipline that's offered by most of the colleges. So I thought about, do I log on and go back and get an entrepreneurship certificate or degree, or everything, of course, if you use the internet for all that it's worth. I started studying entrepreneurship.
And I was just looking up UAB Entrepreneurship. We have a program here that's relatively new, and it's one of the fastest, I think it is the fastest growing program right now on campus. And it's really, really getting traction. Dee, I don't know if you know much about it, but I know you have remained connected to UAB, and we appreciate everything that you have done and just spending the time even with us to go through this important topic that employees really need to look at to kind of better themselves and improve on their success.
I agree. Are there any, your questions have been great, and thank you for navigating the question box. Is there anything else that anyone else has a burning question? So if you text Dee, I can send you a copy of the presentation from today. I know that Greg is also going to make the recording available on Monday or so.
Yep, correct. And we've filtered in some conversation and questions from the audience. We did plop in Atomic Habits book, a link to Amazon. It's just the easiest way to get that out there. You see the text D to 66866, as well as all of Dee's information. Great feedback. Thank you so much for joining us, Dee. It's been incredible having you and getting to know you even more along this entire process.
Thank you so much for having me, and thank you for the UAB National Alumni Society. When they come to Dallas, connecting with that team has been amazing, which is how I wound up being here today. So for those of you who are still involved with National Alumni Society, I hope I see you through football season, and I see some of my classmates and friends hopped on today. So I'm just excited to be here, and thanks again for having me.
You're so welcome. And before we go, we want to take a look at some other upcoming events that we have as we slide this slide in. Next Thursday, August 3rd, we're going to be welcoming a panel of educators for tips and tricks for curing the back-to-school blues. Join us as we explore what parents need to know as their kids return to the classroom. On Sunday, August 25th, join us for on the campus green for our second annual Legacy Family Day, sponsored by Legacy Credit Union. Wind down summer with water slides, a petting zoo, pony carousel, and a lot more. On Wednesday, August 30th, return for the final part of our Push to Play series as we feature Dr. Dana Watson as she takes a look at mental health and young athletes, stress, eating disorders, and more. And on Tuesday, September 19th, Bambi Ingram and Nick Chincio will be here for Strategizing for Sustainability. Learn what UAB is doing and how you can play a role in your daily life. Register for these events and a lot more at alumni.uab.edu/events. Finally, tell us how we're doing. What did you think about today's webinar? The QR code on your screen takes you to a short survey. Please share your feedback so we can continue to offer webinars that interest you. Once again, thanks so much for joining us for today's webinar. And as always, go Blazers.